Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I have been going over a series of video presentations that correspond to Microsoft's Getting Started with ASP.NET MVC5. I'm in the middle of Lesson 10 of 11, Adding Validation, and I'm up to the how validation occurs in the Create View and Create Action methods. And the author says, you might wonder how the validation user interface was generated without any updates in the code for the controller reviews. The next listing shows what the create methods in the movie controller class look like. They're unchanged from how we created them earlier in the tutorial. The first HTTP GET create displays the initial create form. The second, the post, which is right here, handles the form post. The second create method calls the model.modelState.isValid, and that's a key. That checks whether the movie has any validation errors. Calling this method evaluates any validation attributes that have been applied to the object. If the object has validation errors, the create method redisplays the form. If there are no errors, the method saves the new movie in the database. In our movie example, the form is not posted to the server when there are validation errors detected on the client side. The second create is never called. If you disable JavaScript in your browser, client validation is disabled and the HTTP post create method calls the modelState.isValid to check whether or not the movie has any validation errors. Now they talk about coming in here and setting breakpoints, etc., and disabling JavaScript. I'm not going to do that. Feel free to do that if you want on your own. So they show how you can disable it both in Chrome and I think in Internet Explorer. I don't really remember. I just don't have the time right now to do that. Below is the create.cshtml view template that you scaffolded earlier in the tutorial. It is used by the action methods both shown above, both to display the initial form and redisplay it in case there's any kind of error. Notice how the code uses the HTML.edit4 helper to output the input element for each movie property. Right here. Next to this helper is a call to the validator message. These two helper methods work in unison with one another and with the model object that's passed by the controller to the view. They automatically look for validation attributes specified on the model and display error messages if or as appropriate. So let me just jump back into here. And the author says here, what's really nice about using this approach is that neither the controller nor the create view template knows anything about the actual validation rules that are being imposed. Neither the controller nor the view. And that's good because these are business rules, and as mentioned earlier, the business rules should only be set up in the model, which is what we're doing. If you want to change the validation logic later, you can do so in exactly one place by adding validation attributes to the model. In this example, in the movie class. You don't have to worry about different parts of the app being inconsistent with how the rules are enforced. Since all the validation logic is defined in one place, it can be used everywhere, which keeps your code clean and allows you to adhere to the dry principle. All right. Finally, to finish this up, the last 3 pages or so, using data type attributes. Open the movie.cs class and examine the movie class, or file and examine the class. This is our movie.cs. The system.component.componentModel.data annotations namespace provides formatting attributes in addition to the built-in set of validation attributes. We've already applied a data type enumeration value to the release date into the price field. The following shows the release date and price properties with the appropriate data type attribute. Data type currency, data type date. The data type attribute, as it says, only provides hints for the view engine to format the data and supply attributes as necessary. You can use a regular expression attribute. If you want to know more about regular expressions, I always push people at this. It's regular-expressions expressions.info. Ugly site, but a site that has virtually everything you could look for: quick starts, tutorials, different languages, examples, references. All right, if I go to tools and languages, see, do they have ASP.NET in here? They've got .NET. I don't see any ASP just looking at it quickly. But I'm sure that if I type in ASP.NET regular expression, it's going to push me off to msdn.microsoft.com. There's a couple of them here. How to use regular expressions to constrain input in here. All right. And I'm sure that if you take a look through that, if you have any questions, that should probably at least get you on the road to answering them, if not answering them themselves. All right. Data type date does not specify the format of the date to be displayed. By default, it's displayed according to whatever the default format is. So we use the display format in here, okay? I think we even cut it down later to just Y. The apply in edit, or apply format in edit, that setting that you see here, as it says, specifies that the specified formatting should also be applied when the value is displayed in a text box for editing. You might not want that for some fields. All right, you might find that a little bit intrusive. If you had a currency field and had a $ and commas, etc., you might not want that. You can use the display format attribute by itself, it says here, but it's generally considered a good idea to use it with the data type attribute. It provides the following benefits that you don't get with display format. The browser can enable HTML5 features, for example, showing a calendar control, showing the appropriate locale, currency symbol, etc. Second, by default, the browser will render it using the correct format based on the locale. Finally, the data type attribute can enable MVC to choose the right field template to render. Now, the author mentions here on the last page, if you use the data type attribute with a date field, you have to specify the date display format attribute also in order to ensure that the fields renders correctly in Chrome. All right, so Chrome, here's one place where it's a little quirky as opposed to maybe IE or Edge. All right. Note, jQuery validation does not work with the range attribute and date time. For instance, the following always displays an error even when the date is within the range. You will need to disable
Semesters 1 and 2. Hey Jeff, how are you?
Morning.
So in the fall.
So, sorry about that. I had a couple visitors that were unplanned. But says you will need, in this case, since this will always give you an error, you will need to disable jQuery date validation to use the range attribute. It's generally not a good practice to compile hard dates in models, so using the range attribute and the date time is discouraged. All right. So the following code shows combining attributes on one line. So there's the display name and there's the data type. In the last part of the series, which is all that's left, we'll review the application and make some improvements to the automatically generated details and delete methods. So this last thing in here, and it's not that long, will be the last presentation that we will make in this series. After I get done with that, the plan is to start on the getting started with Entity Framework 6 database first using MVC5. All right, so I'll be back with this last presentation here in just a couple minutes.